Hello, everyone. We're back with Ken Dombrowski, executive life coach and master hypnotist. And I want to talk about the value of compromise. I feel like there's kind of a thin line between, what someone might consider an unhealthy relationship or over-compromising. But what is the value of compromise?
Well, it really does have a huge conversation about it, because I think kind of what happens is everybody thinks that they're compromising and really no one else is. And it becomes so one-sided that way. And we look at this from especially your generation. We see all this on these life coaches and dating coaches on TikTok and YouTube and whatnot, all about the red flag, right? Mm-hmm. And what did you call it?
The ick.
The ick.
Yep.
Right? The red flags, the ick, all that kind of stuff. Well, what that is a complete and total, not just lack of compromising, but that's actually a refusal to compromise. We have so many people, men and women alike, this is not going to be one side or the other,
right,
who are expecting for 100% of my needs to be met by whoever I'm with. And if they're not, well, that's a red flag. That they're not going to be there for me when I really need them. They're not going to be there for me, in a crisis, and they don't really love me, or they don't really care about me if they're not at my every beck and call. But then you ask that person, well, have you been there for them? And they kind of look at you cross-eyed for a moment, like that didn't compute. Mm-hmm. I'm supposed to be there for them. No, they're supposed to be there for me. No, it's two people. So when we have a relationship, it's two parts coming together as one. So each side needs to over-compromise for the relationship. You're not compromising for the person. You want to compromise for the relationship. That's the difference to look at. So, for example, I've been married to your mother for 29 years. This year we'll be celebrating 30 years. Well, you don't get through 30 years without having an understanding that your relationship comes first. Not me, not her, our relationship. So you think, oh, well, you got to put in 50-50. Bullshit. No, this is not 50-50. I put in 90%, she puts in 90%. So we're both overcompensating, over-contributing to a relationship. Now we have a healthy, happy, strong, powerful bond that, really, I don't imagine what could tear us apart. So if we were to go around looking for red flags and ick, we'd have gotten divorced after 1 month.
Right.
That happens. So actually, I want to put that question back to you as you're what, 25?
Correct.
Somewhere in there? I was there when you were born, I know.
Right.
What would you say are some of the modern day relationships your age that you're seeing that you just kind of roll your eyes and say, are you kidding me?
I just think in general it is the lack of anybody wanting to compromise, not on any specific thing from male to female or anything like that. It's just in general, you look at so many couples and maybe someone is way too clingy and they're upset that their partner isn't giving them more of their attention. The other person is then upset because they're being asked to give too much attention and not being able to kind of, have those normal friendships anymore. Like, it's affecting too much of what someone has in their single life that I feel like they kind of forget they're trying to build a life with somebody else. Mm-hmm. So I really do think it is like looking out for yourself and not looking out for anybody else. Kind of like you're saying, there's no compromise. Someone sees the fact that they maybe buy something for their significant other or do the same action of love or whatever consistently for their significant other as them doing so much for that person. And that's, I think, why this conversation is so important, because compromise isn't talked about. It's just people taking these like menial, rather unimportant things and calling them trying so much harder than the other.
Right. Well, I'm glad I asked you for that, because that's pretty much in alignment with what I would expect you to say, more or less. And I have some explanation. It's generational. Mm-hmm. I'm in my mid-50s. What am I, 56, I think, right now? And so I was raised by baby boomers.
Yep.
My parents were baby boomers. They're both deceased now. But both of my parents, being of the baby boomer generation, largely, not everybody, but we're 95% of the baby boomers, they were not good parents. These people, they cared more about their social life, more about, their cigarette smoking, their drinking, their going out and their partying was more important to them than staying at home and being a parent. Mm-hmm. However, that created something. That created a whole generation of children, which I'm Generation X, a whole generation of children who were getting a lack of love, a lack of attention, a lack of care, a lack of nurturing. So that was a bar was set really, really low. So we were happy to get into any kind of a relationship where we got just a little, if I could just get just 10% more than what I grew up with, I'm happy. I'm really happy. We could be happy with that. I can easily brush off the problems that come with it because it's worth it. However, I'm Generation X and I raised a millennial. And so Gen X, what we did with our experience was we became overly involved in our children's lives. We became overly loving, caring, and nurturing, ever present, constantly present in our children's lives, doing stuff with you and for you, that we set that bar so freaking high that throughout your entire childhood and in teenage years that it becomes difficult for you to see how someone else can fulfill that equal or even especially better than your parents did.
Right.
So that's why my personal opinion is why we're seeing so many young people who basically have no desire at all to get married or even have children because they're too used to being, I don't want to say like the center of attention, but they're just so used to getting what fulfilled in a way that they need. So they're going to either get that or they're going to just do nothing at all.
Right.
You are not taught compromise. You were taught you're super special, you're awesome in whatever you do. Just walk into a room and people celebrate, oh my gosh, Lauren's here, hey, and all that kind of stuff, right? It's kind of what you grew up with. So who else is going to do that? Have you ever had a boyfriend do that? A friend do that?
No.
No. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry we did that to you. On behalf of all Generation X, by the way, I'm very sorry for the millennials that we raised in this way. But everybody just thinks that they're doing the best that they can with what they have and what they know at the time. So you guys are looking at those as red flags because I'm not getting what I need. You have in your subconscious mind from birth through, say, 18 years old, parents that gave you everything you needed plus more. And that sets the expectation bar really, really high.
I mean, I agree. We've had this conversation before off camera. So I feel like that's completely accurate. Like we said, as those generations pass through and whatever's kind of missing just kind of gets overcompensated in the next generation. So I agree with all that. And aren't we looking at like record low marriages, pregnancies, everything across the board? We're really low. And I think that has to do with like the selfishness that comes from the lack of compromisation from, the over nurturing of our parents. So I think it's definitely an interesting conversation because I personally say all the time, I'm in my 20s. I should have every right to be selfish. I don't want a kid yet because I'm not ready to not be selfish. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being selfish, obviously, to a certain extent. But that's one of the things, like, I don't want to compromise with a kid in my life or anything like that right now. Maybe I'm starting to understand more what it looks like to genuinely compromise for not only like a romantic relationship, but friendships in general. Like there's a lot that goes into that I feel like you're right. We're just kind of missing the tools for. And so it ends up looking like you feel like you're doing too much for somebody or you're turning people away too quickly because you want what you want, but that's not how life works.
Mm-hmm. That's very well said and very well put.
Do you have anything else to add? I feel like we covered it pretty well.
I think that was pretty good there, yeah. So if I was to say one final thing, throw away the whole notion of red flags and ick, and you simply allow yourself to participate in a relationship. And if the good outweighs the bad, even by just a couple of percent, maybe pursue it and see where it goes. But if you go on a first date and you're seeing red flag, red flag, red flag, and you want to leave, I mean, that's a bit too soon.
Aren't you the red flag at that point?
There you go. That's perfect right there. Aren't you the red flag now? Yeah, but there you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all of that information and insight.
My pleasure.
If you would like to find out if you need to compromise a little bit more or how to, give us a call today. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.